A Hunter in Teyvat, Chapter 2, Fan Fiction, by Azazyel. Please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. Wielding the elemental powers of Anemo was at least similar to learning how to ride a bike, and having a form of training wheels also helped a lot in that sense as well, with my training wheels being able to channel the Anemo energy through the sword to easily send my green sword beams with the saber slashes. Not only was using the sword to channel the Anemo powers far easier, but it was also more efficient somehow in terms of my internal energy used. Though on the other end, Anemo elemental energy did piss all no matter how I used it against other wind slimes other than to throw them obscene distances. Note to self. Shredding a water slime violently with dozens of wind blades makes a major fucking mess. I groused and Lumen nodded, also visibly irritated with how she was completely soaked, as her little raisin gun that liked to suck in enemies and act as a blender was more like sticking a bunch of water in a t-shirt cannon and blasting it in a certain direction when it sucked up a few water slimes. I need to remember that Anemo's whole thing is being used to grab other elemental energy and augment them in an explosive reaction, most notably used for the more volatile elements like electro and pyro. Well, Mondstadt is only another 10 or so minute walk from here, I muttered as we made our way onto the main path that I sort of recalled from playing Genshin, though I was certainly noticing that the world was bigger in every sense of the word. So, in other words, I wouldn't be able to jog from Mondstadt to Liyue Harbor in less than an hour or two like you could in a game. So, Jake, what are you going to do when you get to Mondstadt? Paimon asked me with Lumen perking up in interest. I hummed and thought as my mind raced, and honestly, I was fairly confident in my chances at joining the Knights of Favonius, even if Dialek was right, and other than the vision wielders, the rest of the knights were trash that could barely deal with the local weakest forms of hilichurls, let alone the large shield-wielding variants. I think with having my vision, I could work with the Knights of Favonius and, more importantly, join the Adventurers Guild, to get information and jobs for resources. I had little doubt that I was going to step on the toes of the Fatui, the so-called diplomats of Snezhnaya. So I needed a way to get information, and what better way other than interrogating the gods themselves to find spatial attribute stuff to possibly get me off this world. I wasn't sure, but I had strong feelings that the elemental gnosis that the Fatui were constantly searching for and messing with the countries of the world was an entrance key for a person wielding them to become a god of some sort. Which would explain how there were several different gods for certain elements over the years other than the Geo-Archon, who simply killed all his challengers, or more likely the Adepti killed anyone making too much noise about challenging Morax. So, either way, I had a few chances to snag myself a gnosis, more particularly when Signora takes Vendis to assuredly get information, and if necessary, I could one day go pick a fight with that unknown god that ganked both of the travelers in the prologue to find a way out of this universal bubble. What are the Knights of Favonius like then? Do they have a lot of food? Paimon continued to ask, but we all could see where her main thoughts were. The glutton. Wait, Lumen is a kleptomaniac and Paimon is a black hole of gluttony that can eat more food than she weighs. I need to be careful not to catch a mental illness if I stay with them. I kept a light smile and didn't show any mental disturbance to the realization that I was walking around with a couple of freaks as I answered Paimon's questions confidently. Well, for the most part, the knights do well around the city of Mondstadt, but if they aren't vision wielders then they don't account for much, as the whole group goes for more of an individual strength culture, and even when they are sent out on clearing missions, if they can't clear a camp of monsters they typically just have to report back and wait for the vision wielders to come clear out the camps which overwork them. I explained and couldn't help but grimace at the memories of all the dumbass commissions that were constantly thrown at me in Mondstadt to clear hilichurl camps and such. But if you are looking for information here in Mondstadt, I highly recommend the Knights at first, but if you can, try the Anemo god Barbados's church. They also have a few vision wielders within their halls and have assassins doing their shadow work. I spoke, and my answer was a number of branches being violently broken, and then the sounds of rushed footsteps rushing towards us from the hill to our side. A young woman dressed in a red jacket and brown shorts jumped off the ledge of the hill beside us, and as she rolled to a stop, she pointed at me and Lumen, yelling at us. She stood at attention with her fist against her chest. May the Anemo god be with you, strangers. I blinked in surprise as, seriously, what kind of greeting was someone just diving off a hillside into an admittedly cool roll only to yell out, God bless you? But the woman thankfully continued as Paimon flew out from behind Lumen, seeing the person wasn't a bandit or otherwise a monster. I am Amber, an outrider of the Knights of Favonius. You don't look like citizens of Mondstadt, so explain yourself. Paimon instantly blustered out as she was shaking her arms out in denial. We aren't looking for any trouble. Amber huffed, folding her arms across her chest as she glared at Paimon. That's what all the troublemakers say. Lumen cut off Paymon's next words, which would have likely ended up getting us stuck in the Mondstadt jail cells, as she spoke softly. My name is Lumen, and this next to me is Jake Barris. Paimon sniffed at being not so subtly interrupted, but I could only nod in appreciation at Lumen's tact and to confirm her words about my identity. Amber nodded, appreciating Lumen being somewhat serious, then she frowned and looked directly at Paimon, asking, "And what's the deal with this mascot?" I instantly answered the most appropriate response. Emergency food. Paimon isn't emergency food. The rotisserie chicken-sized being cried out, stamping her feet in the air, then harumphed, turning away from me and Lumen, who threw a small smile at me for seemingly coming up with the same answer as she was thinking. Right. Well, you guys don't seem to be problematic, so we should get you back into Mondstadt, what with a dragon flying around causing carnage. Don't worry, I shall escort you both there. Amber said, seeming to be putting down her wariness towards us. But don't you have something else to do around here if you are a knight of Favonius? Paimon spoke with her tone showing how suspicious she was of Amber's intentions in leading us around when we could clearly see Mondstadt in the distance. Well, I do need to clear a small hilichurl camp. But don't worry, I can deal with them and keep you safe all at the same time, she said confidently, then she shrugged as she pointed at me and Lumen. Plus, I don't trust you too, and with the way you guys are wearing glowing clothes, it's obvious that you are both vision wielders. So, I naturally need to keep an eye out. I nodded to her explanation, as it was the responsible thing to do in this world that treated vision wielders of note as basically nuclear deterrents, as they could easily slaughter armies should they not meet a match, as shown by Diluc or Child fighting an army of hilichurls and abyss mages, or in Child's case tearing through ruin guards like they were nothing. Very well. May I help you so we can get to Mondstadt sooner? I said, not even alluding to a reward and instead simply asking if we could just go about our own business sooner. I will help as well, Lumen interjected with her sword flashing into her hands. Amber helplessly nodded, unable to deny the help of a duo of vision wielders. All right, just follow me then. With that said, we all jogged down the path towards Mondstadt until we found a decrepit chest just lying on the side of the road. Are these chests ever booby-trapped, and why haven't people emptied such an obvious chest? I asked incredulously at this world's logic. Lumen, who was about to open the rotten chest with her bare hand, heard my words about a booby trap, and instead of opening it via her hands, she used her sword to break open the hinges and threw the top off. Amber stayed beside me as the resident kleptomaniac. Lumen ran ahead to pillage the chest, and answered my question with a wry smile. Well, most people, if they leave their city or village, stick strictly to the roads between the places they are traveling to, and honestly, if you have no combat training and a swarm of pyro or electro slime, or heaven forbid a tribe of hilichurls falls upon you in your travels. It was apparent that she meant that any caravan that fell into those circumstances didn't last long. I mean, honestly, for the fire and electric slimes, they were far more dangerous than the wind ones, as the wind ones, at least the small ones we came across, were literally as dangerous as a football hitting you, and likewise for the water slimes shooting a high-pressure stream of water at you. Either way, having thick clothes would invalidate those two slimes, whereas fire and electric slimes were deadly even if there were just one.